Good morning, council members, staff, and members of the public. It is Tuesday, March 17th, and I would like to call this meeting of the Policy and Strategy Committee to order and begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We do have regrets today from Councillor Brooks and Councillor DeLong. Are there any announcements, acknowledgements, or recognitions from council members? Seeing none. We got public input first? Okay. At this time, we allow 15 minutes for public input from anybody that would wish to speak and address council. If there's anybody here in the gallery to speak, would you just simply raise your hand? Okay. Seeing none, I'll just remind those who might be listening or for visiting for the first time, we allow this at the beginning of our council meetings, policy strategy meetings, and finance meetings. It's a time for you to come forward and bring concerns or share your thoughts to council. Are there any changes or approvals to the agenda? Mayor McLean-Weil.
I have an item of correspondence that I would like to see added wherever you feel is appropriate.
Okay, so we'll add correspondence under added items and make it 11.1. Any other changes needed? If not, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Moore. All those in favor? Agenda is approved.
I have a conflict of interest for items 7.1 and 10.1.
Perfect. So our deputy CEO has declared a conflict of interest on 7.1 and 10. 10.1. Okay, we made note of that. We have one set of minutes to approve, February 17th, 2026. Any changes needed to those minutes? Seeing none, we'll call those approved. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Deputy CEO, Mr. Demerick.
Yes, we did have two individuals come forward and provide public input. Both of those items are related to another item that was on the agenda, and so they've been addressed already.
Thank you for addressing those. We do have a presentation scheduled for 9:15. I do see our speaker in the galley. Would you like to come forward now and begin that presentation? Or if you're expecting more people to come, we can delay for the 9:15 timeline. Okay, please feel free to come forward to the microphone here. We ask that you just speak directly in the mic, therefore anybody listening can hear. And if you need to rise the podium, there's a button right in front of your right hand that will make it go up and down. Oh, okay. And the presentation today that we're receiving is from MICA, which stands for Mahome Islands Conservation Association, on the Blue Lantern shellfish. And we have Sid Demerick here on behalf of that organization. Welcome, Sid.
Thank you so much. Happy St. Patrick's Day. It's my great pleasure to be here to represent the Mahone Islands Conservation Association. And do we have my slides?
If you just open up the laptop there, and we'll get you started there.
This is not my area of expertise, so I'm delighted that Trudy's here.
It's not my area of expertise either.
Well, while we're getting ready to start, I would just love to introduce myself. And I have many connections with Modal, not the least of which is I'm very, very proud that Sandy's and our middle son, Alex, is your deputy CAO. We're very proud of that. And I wonder if the deputy could get his dad a glass of water.
I'll go get
coffee. No, water would be lovely.
What do I click on?
I thought he was going to give me a hug.
There's a tech problem.
Secondly, I don't know if this carries any weight with you or not. My principal residence is in Chester, but I've been a taxpayer in Modal for 45 years. You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. And thirdly, if you go in any school in Modal that was built after World War II, the early ones, there's a plaque, and it says, architect C.D. Davison, contractor Acadia. But, thank you, Mr. Deputy. But in about 1962, it changes. Architect J. Philip Dumeric and Associates. Builder Acadia, that never changes. Then J. Philip Dumeric is my dear father and Alex's grandfather. And that progresses to Dumeric and Byrne, which is the same outfit, Builder Acadia. And I'm very happy to say that if you go into Hebville Academy, it says S.P. Dumeric Architect. But not Acadia, it was Roscoe, because Acadia was, had just gone out of business at that time. So the Mahone Islands Conservation Association, I know it needs no introduction to you because you're our valued partners in many aspects. Ah, beautiful. But I do want to just repeat our mission. You've probably heard this many times from John Meisner, who would have loved to be here, but he's traveling today. Oh, and I want to introduce two of our directors, Scott Robertson and Krista Longard, both valued members of the board. So I mentioned the mission because it's one of the few organizations I know that believes in its mission so strongly. The mission comes up at every board meeting, and if anything comes up before the board, we drag out the mission statement, and it's always evaluated against this mission statement to protect and conserve the natural environment of the islands and shoreline of Mahone Bay and the traditional social and recreational opportunities provided by its various communities. What it doesn't mention is public, but I am going to talk about the public aspects of this over and over again today. So you've heard all this before, but I just want to emphasize we've been in business for over 20 years, and we have protected, changed from public ownership to private ownership, 23 either entire islands, parts of islands, or pieces of shoreline. And we're very proud that Modal has partnered with us on so many of these. Our very first acquisition, Andrews Island, Modal were very generous contributors. The title is held by Province of Nova Scotia. But on Mason's Island, well, we own the whole north end of Mason's Island. I say we have been involved in changing from private to public ownership, the whole north end of Mason's Island. There was two transactions. One of these, we were equal partners with Modal and the province, and the title ended up with Modal. Another one, Modal supported us generously, and I think the title is with Province of Nova Scotia. Sacrifice Island, again, Modal supported us strongly, and the title is with the Province of Nova Scotia. And we're very proud of Mocha, our conservation area near Indian Point, and that was a 50-50 venture with Modal and Mica, and then the title rests with Modal, but we kind of are joint stewards of that property. We're very proud of that because it's one of the few pieces of shoreline where the public can access the shore. And of course, our most recent venture, the last couple of years, with Modal, another 50-50 venture, we're putting public moorings on the public waters to serve the public islands. Can you get the theme here? We found to our shock that people were putting private moorings on our public islands. And there were so many of them that if you wanted to go and drop your own anchor, you just couldn't get through this field of moorings. So a joint venture with Modal in the south end of the bay and Chester in the north end of the bay, we have been gradually putting out public moorings wherever we can and gradually replacing the private moorings. People are seeing the light and turning their moorings over to us. So I want to go directly to a portion of the bay, which you can see in a circle. And if I highlight that, that doesn't help you much. But if I go to Google Earth, good old Google Earth, we're zooming in on an area around Andrews Island and Indian Point. And to blow it up here, you see Indian Point, Gifford Island, and Swickers Island. You notice the letters are part red and part white. That's because Modal has helped us with some, it's not quite right, but Swickers is in Modal. Ernst Island, we actually own half the island. Sheep Island, we own the whole island. Goat Island, we own the whole island. And Andrews, our first venture, we own the whole island. So these are very important places for Mica and Modal and all the citizens. So I've been emphasizing public all along because we're making the islands public, we're making the moorings public, and we've always just assumed the water would be public too. That's how you get to the islands. So these two lovely gentlemen, and I've spoken with them and I admire them, they're trying to do the right thing, but they want to farm scallops in Mahone Bay, and we're not against that. There's a scallop farm existing off Snake Island, and I have personally supported the expansion of that. But this scallop lease that is up for discussion now, there's 3 leases, and you can see them on the map here, and they total 106 acres of what I thought was public water to be transferred for the exclusive use of this outfit to grow scallops. We can't even drive a boat across those because they'll be laced with buoys, and in their latest iteration, they're actually going to grow kelp on top of the scallops. So to put this in perspective, there are the islands I referred to a couple of slides ago, and there you can see the locations of these leases. Now, if you were a boater and for some terrible reason, somebody said, look, you can only have 1 boat ride this summer. If you were coming north, you would leave, say, the yacht club in Lunenburg or a public launch somewhere, and you would come up, I can guarantee, if you only had 1 run, you'd come up between Goat Island and Andrews Island and take that beautiful run up through Indian Point. And you can see one of those leases is like a cork in the bottle of my favorite run. And it doesn't show here, but off Andrews Island is a shoal, so that's really going to be constricted. And then it's such a good run, you'd probably make it a turnaround and do it again. But if you wanted to loop around and come home, you'd hook under Callback. There's another one of their leases, and you'd come down along Rose. There's another one of those leases. And to put it in perspective, that lease off Rose Island is almost a kilometer long. It's 0.9 of a kilometer long. So this is a huge amount of water that's being taken from the public for the exclusive use of the scallop farm. I happened to come across this beautiful graphic. This is one of our members, and every black line there is a trip he did last summer. And you notice he did so many trips down that Indian Point run, it's coalesced into one gigantic black line. And you can see where that lease is just like a cork in the bottle there. This guy made several runs down the east side of Rose Island, right where that lease is, and he made a couple of runs in that beautiful guzzle between Callback and Swickers. So I can't emphasize enough how important the public access to these waters are. And I would just conclude by showing you one of the traditional uses. That's my dear friend Rudy Hasse, who was a great supporter of everything conservation-wise, including Mica. That's a beach. And this is the reason why we do what we do. And I would just conclude by asking your support. There is an online portal that you can each go on individually and object to this, but I would really encourage you as a council to write the provincial government, your MLA, the Department of Agriculture, and anybody you can to please try and put a stop to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nemerick, for your presentation. You're probably aware, but if not, and for others in the galley, we traditionally don't make decisions or discuss presentations at the time. However, this is on the agenda later today under our mayor's, deputy mayor's council matters. under council deliberation, so we will be speaking to this today if you would like to stick around to take a part in.
Wonderful.
Are you open for questions, if
Oh,
any?
absolutely.
Okay.
I'd love to have questions.
Yeah, are there any council members that would like to ask any questions or make any comments at this time regarding the presentation? Councillor Smith.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and
welcome.
someday I hope to get out and see some of those areas.
Oh, we'll do that this summer,
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah, one question I have is, your request to us is to put a stop to this, but is there another solution?
Yes, there are a couple of solutions, but the best one would be to encourage these gentlemen and ask them to put their scallop farm somewhere else in Mahone Bay. Mahone Bay is maybe 10 miles deep and 5 or 6 miles wide, and the scallop farm off Snake Island shows that there are lots of locations to put these scallop farms, but this is the core area of boating and public use. The other thing is to take it down the shore to a little bay somewhere that is less inhabited.
Councillor Bell, then Councillor Reinhardt.
Thank you. Mr. Demerit, I spent 30 years as a boater. Most of my time was in the Chester to Mahone Bay area. I've done the trip between Goat and Andrews many times. The one thing you failed to mention is that that's beautiful, fine weather sailing, but occasionally we get a wind that would require us to go on the outside of the island, and you failed to mention that I believe it's Gull Ledge, which poses a danger to people in sailboats. So this location of these farms could put sailors in danger going on the outside, which occasionally you have to. So I just wanted to mention that fact because you were too polite to mention it.
That's very kind of you, Councillor Bell, and I'll incorporate that in my next presentation. Did you ever hit the rock between Goat and Andrews?
Yes, and I called the Coast Guard.
Yeah, I hit it too. But
Actually, I did. I won't say I hit the rock, but I took the outside route, ran into a problem, and once in my 30 years sailing, I had to put out a pan, and Tancook Island Ferry responded to my assistance, as well as the Coast Guard.
that's a wonderful story. Thank you, sir.
Sounds like it was one of those you had to be there stories.
That's right.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Thank you for the presentation. I did a bit of research last night on this, so also thank you for the learning opportunity. You kind of addressed my first question I was going to ask about. You mentioned that there were better locations, so I was going to ask you to just expand on that a little bit. Just to be clear that there is another solution between just no farm or a farm there. So if you have any more to add on that.
Sure. No,
I also have another question.
No, you raise a very good point. The real beauty of the bay is the western side, where we have all these islands. Then they break the wind and they break the waves and they slow the fog down. And I can tell you, it's one of the nicest boating areas in North America. And people come from all over the eastern seaboard of the U.S. to enjoy that. And that's the west side of the bay. The east side of the bay, there's not so many islands, and the wind tends to funnel up there between the two Tancooks. And there's much less boating over there. And way up by East River, you hardly ever see a boat there. So there's lots of room for all of us, and I'm dead against salmon farming because it pollutes, but I'm not so much against scallop farming if it's done in the right place.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what I found in my research, is there's quite a big difference between salmon farming and shellfish farming.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and there's actually can be some benefits to shellfish farming if it's done on a small scale.
Yes.
Yeah. So my other question was around if you're, do you have ecological concerns as well, or is it mostly the location interfering with the boating routes?
Well, I can forward to council a very good paper I just came across this weekend that predicts that there's an invasive species called tourniquets. Have anybody ever come across them? They're called sea squirts, because if you touch them, they squirt right in your eye. They're very invasive. They're like a hard jellyfish, and they coalesce to any line that's around. I get it on my own mooring lines, and this guy says there's going to be so many lines to moor these lanterns, they call them, and to support these lanterns and the lanterns themselves. He thinks it's going to be inundated with tourniquets, and when they die and fluff off to the bottom, there'll be vast areas of the bottom contaminated. So I do have those concerns, and again, I think a smaller version in a different place would be much better.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Question, because the proponents for Blue Lantern began their work a year ago and held a number of public open houses to discuss this. I've read through their application. It's a big document. And in that, they captured a lot of the concerns and recorded that in terms of how much public opposition they received. That's all documented in that. And as I understand, and I stand to be corrected, but what they originally proposed as the number of locations is now diminished, and I think the location of those has also been changed in response to what was heard a year ago. So this is still problematic, because I expect you presented or discussed this at that time, and they're still not located in a place that is suitable. Am I correct in saying that? If you can comment on that.
Yes, Your Worship, absolutely. We did, we actually had a meeting of the MICA board and these two gentlemen, and we were very impressed with their enthusiasm and their entrepreneurial spirit. But in the original iteration, they had 7 sites in very bad locations as far as we were concerned, totaling 106 acres. And all they've done is gone to 3 sites totaling 106 acres, and I think put them in worse spots and bigger spots, because there's only 3 now.
My other question is around the kelp, because there's a lot of exploration being done on the development of the kelp industry. I put that in quotation marks because I think it's still quite small scale. But the opportunities for kelp production in Mahone Bay, and it's, as I understand, being led by the Ecology Action Center, and that production would, I don't know if you can comment on that or if you know anything about that, because in this instance, both kelp and scallops are being developed together, and as I understand, they're both going to be, like from what I have read about kelp production, it's lines that are exposed and would, as I think, would interfere also with recreational boating. I don't know if you can comment on that. In this case, they've combined them, and it's on the lantern, so it's vertical as opposed to perpendicular to the water. Maybe I'm wrong in my understanding of how it's grown, the kelp.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I really don't know much about the pros and cons of kelp farming. I'm encouraged if the EAC is thinking about it. But it's the same problem, really. They're taking too much water away from us. When they first started, they said, oh, you could sail right over these. But then they quickly backtracked on that and said, no, actually, there's too many lines, and a boat with a big draft would get tangled up. And now, of course, there's going to be the scallop lantern and then the kelp on top of that. So it's absolutely no chance of sailing through now. And they don't want us to sail through. They want the exclusive use of 106 acres. That's what really bothers us.
So it's, you know, for our council, this will be part of our deliberation, is the balance
Yes.
between the recreation and the potential business application
I
and
understand.
economic value. So it becomes, it's really a very, and this is the ongoing situation that government bodies find themselves in. We're not in the decision-making role. All our role will be is in advocating, and so there's a balance there that for us in our discussion, I think we will have to take. I don't know where that will lead us. We'll see how the discussion goes. But in my own mind, as much as I support the recreational use, I also see personally, this is a personal statement, not a council statement, personal statement, and how we find balance in doing these projects. And I expect that Mahone Bay, the location, even though it's been moved and consolidated, when you suggest that those be moved to another location, I expect that the work has been done to identify that those are prime spots for this development, whether it be kelp, or scallops, and in this case, a combination of the two. So in my own mind, I struggle on how we find that right balance. And in this case, because we know that this is a production that isn't contributing to a water issue or a pollution issue, it becomes even more attractive on the economic side, as opposed to, and I know that recreational boating produces lots of value in our community, not only for the enterprises that support it, but for the people who buy boats and those who are attracted to come here. So I have to say, I struggle a bit, even though we've been involved in supporting the work of Micah, I struggle a bit with how we find that balance. And that continues to be for all of these projects, whether it be in Mahone Bay or, you know, further down the shore in Queens County or some other location in Nova Scotia or in New Brunswick. All of these opportunities challenge us to find the right balance, and that will be, I think, the struggle for us as well, finding that balance. That's my personal comment, not a reflection of what council may do, but how I will have to think about it as we go along in our discussion.
May I give a personal comment? I fully understand what you're saying. I would point out there's a group called Friends of Mahone Bay, which is comprised of, I think, 40 different industries in Mahone Bay, recreational, water-based industries, and they're definitely against this. And I would say in terms of balance, we have this beautiful area known all over Nova Scotia and the eastern seaboard as the pristine heart of fabulous sailing. And to balance that against taking 106 acres off the map for the sake of a couple of guys and their scallop farm, that doesn't, to me, balance. But I certainly respect your point of view.
Councillor Smith.
Just as a follow-up to the question of kind of all or nothing, I had read that Shannon Arnold from EAC was reported as saying that it's early in the development process. This was from an article last week, and that this is a quote: "There's opportunity to continue to discuss whether the size or shape of the farms can be slightly different to accommodate the main boating routes that have to happen there, or make sure recreational users can get to the islands they like to anchor on. There's a lot of room for accommodation here." So I guess I would just ask for a response to that. Like, do you feel, and do you see the opportunity in this process for that accommodation to happen and for it to be meaningful for the boating community as the development process proceeds.
We are certainly open to discussion and compromise, but I would draw your attention to this beautiful area around Indian Point. It's the prime, best, most beautiful area of the bay, and our idea of compromise would be to stay away from that particular corner of the bay and go somewhere else in the bay. And I sail the whole bay, and I would freely admit there are lots of places that would be better than this.
Are there any other comments or questions from council members? Oh, Mayor McLean-Wild.
Yeah, just in that, in your discussion when you met with Blue Lantern, did you discuss that, like where some other locations might be, that, to follow up on what Councillor Smith said, that would allow this coexistence of both their enterprise and the recreational boating?
Yes, we listened carefully to what they had to say, and then we followed up with a letter, and we said we're not against this in principle. You know, we think you're trying to do a good thing, but please do it not in this area of the bay.
Councillor Oikel.
Thank you. Just in following up with what the mayor said, did you specify, because you're a boater, and you know lots of other people that have gone through that whole area, perhaps making specific suggestions on areas for them to go, rather than just saying you could go somewhere else? Might be, I don't know, did you mention specific areas?
I don't believe we did.
I don't see any other speakers, so again, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing this information with us. If you're going to stick around, we will be discussing later on the agenda. For anyone that does have to depart, our meetings are recorded and they will be available on our YouTube channel later on today if you want to come back and listen to the discussion from council. So thank you again.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, moving along in our agenda, we have no referrals from council to discuss, so we'll go down to staff reports. And under Recreation, Parks and Tourism Department, up first, we have 9.1.1, Proposed Policy 103, Active Transportation, and we have Moira Fryer here to present that.
Okay. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Moira Fryer. I'm the Active Living Coordinator. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about active transportation and to discuss a proposed path moving forward for advancing active transportation within the municipality. Today, I will briefly define active transportation and highlight how MODL is already supporting AT initiatives. I'll review the background and timeline of active transportation at Modal and provide a quick summary of the AT plan. Then I will discuss the feedback that was received by Council and present a policy-based approach for your consideration and put forth a motion to approve the policy. The motion that will be put forward is that the Policy and Strategy Committee recommends that Council approve Policy 103, Active Transportation as presented, and hereby gives 7 days notice of Council's intent to adopt at the March 24th, 2026 Council meeting. So what is active transportation? It means the movement of people or goods powered by human activity. So some examples being walking, cycling, skateboarding, paddling, the use of mobility devices, and e-bikes. It encompasses a variety of trip purposes and trip lengths. It contributes to healthier residents, stronger community connections, environmental sustainability, and a more balanced transportation system overall. It's important to note that active transportation is more than just getting from point A to point B. Advancing active transportation means reducing reliance on vehicles, therefore lowering emissions and traffic congestion, improving physical and mental well-being by reducing the risk of chronic disease, enhancing safety by reducing collisions and hazards, and increasing accessibility and equity, so providing options for all ages, all abilities, and all income levels. Strengthening community connectivity, so connecting our schools, recreation, work, services, and just everyday destinations. AT builds healthier, more connected, and livable communities, benefiting everyone and improving quality of life. Active transportation also goes beyond infrastructure projects, so it's not just about building sidewalks, bike lanes, or trails. It's about how we plan, how we deliver programs, how we invest in our communities to support people moving safely and conveniently. Some recent initiatives and ways MODL is already supporting AT are the e-bike loan program, including an accessible style e-bike, try-ride pop-up events, and adult learn-to-ride cycling programs, bike fix-it stations and bike rack subsidies, women on wheels cycling groups, walking programs, a park and explore initiative, the Osprey Village sidewalk, the funding support that we provide for our trail groups, trail accessibility upgrades, for example, the ones at Miller Point or Indian Falls, installing seating and rest areas on parks and trails, the public transit partnership with the town of Bridgewater, and of course, Lunenburg County Wheels. Active transportation represents an ongoing cultural shift in how we think about mobility in MODL, and it's important to know that it can be advanced in a variety of different ways. I wanted to take a quick look at the background and timeline of AT and MODL and how we're ending up where we are today. So in 2010, MODL adopted its first active transportation plan. Modal was one of the first rural municipalities to adopt an AT plan, so we demonstrated early leadership in this area. In September 2023, Urban Systems was contracted to develop an updated AT plan. So the previous plan included extensive paved shoulders with significant costs of about $50 million for just paved shoulders alone. So Urban Systems focused on a community engagement approach. So they emphasized shorter, community-identified corridors and smaller actionable segments based on the priorities that they heard in their public engagement sessions. In June 2024, the AT plan was finalized and presented to Council by Urban Systems, so it was officially received by Council. And in December 2025, the plan was presented to Policy and Strategy Committee as an information item. So Council provided feedback and raised some concerns. So today, in response to the feedback from Council, I'm presenting a policy-based approach to active transportation. Before I get into Council's questions and feedback on the AT plan, I'm just going to provide a very brief high-level recap of the plan that was presented in December. The plan is an in-depth 120-page document, but today I'm just going to condense into 2 slides to quickly highlight the key points and provide a bit of context for today's discussion. The AT plan was completed by Urban Systems over a 10-month period. It focused on priorities identified by the community and on addressing gaps in the existing AT networks. The AT plan was broken into 9 recommended corridors with a total network length of about 34 kilometers of improvements. The 9 corridors that were identified by community and reflected in the plan were Cookville, New Germany, Blockhouse, Petite Riviere, Mark Connector, LaHaven Riverport, Big Mushamush Lake, South LaHave, and the LaHave River Trail. The plan outlined a variety of recommended facility types along those various corridors, such as neighborhood greenways, multi-use paths, trails, sidewalks, and paved shoulders. It included short, medium, and long-term priorities based on factors like proximity to schools, population density, and safety. The estimated cost for implementation ranged from 26 to 45 million, and that was over a 10-year period. And importantly, the plan was designed to be a living document, so meant to guide implementation over time and adapt to changing needs. Through discussions of the Active Transportation Plan in December 2025, Council raised a few concerns about adopting this plan. One of the key concerns raised was about managing public expectations. So Council noted that the plan highlights specific projects, corridors, has estimated costs, so this could be interpreted as a commitment to deliver specific projects on specific timelines. Council also recognized that large transportation infrastructure projects can be expensive, so there's a discussion about ensuring that financial commitments remain realistic and that they remain manageable. Council discussed the need to remain flexible and responsive to emerging opportunities. For example, communities such as Wildville or Blue Rocks were not identified in the AT plan, but safety concerns have been raised in those communities. So we need to be able to adapt to changing circumstances and shift priorities as required. Lastly, Council highlighted the importance on focusing on what MODL can control. So the majority of major infrastructure connections, we will rely on partners. So whether it be trail groups, private landowners, public works, or other agencies, the municipality should consider where they have a more direct influence when prioritizing projects. It is important to think about the areas that we can control for advancing active transportation. So the programs we choose to run, the AT links within our own parks and properties, our partnerships with trail groups, education and awareness of the work we do, how much we spend, how well we plan, and how we shape new developments and planning to include active transportation. So the takeaway from these discussions is that there's a goal to demonstrate Council's commitment to active transportation while staying flexible, managing public expectations responsibly, keeping costs realistic, and recognizing that staff need direction to advance the work. The approach staff are proposing is that Council adopts an active transportation policy as a public-facing document. This policy would show the municipality's commitment to AT and set guiding principles and procedures for advancing active transportation in the municipality. The detailed active transportation plan would remain an internal working document for staff. This approach establishes a formal commitment at the council level while ensuring staff have a clear, practical framework to guide ongoing work. The AT policy establishes purposes and goals which provide overall direction for how MODL supports and advances AT. It outlines approaches and procedures that guide municipal planning, programs, partnerships, and investments, and it includes 11 guiding principles that emphasize things like education and awareness, safety, accessibility, important ones, strengthening our community connections, making strategic investments at the right time and in the right place, and aligning AT work with broader municipal priorities. This approach allows council to demonstrate commitment to active transportation without locking the municipality into specific projects, costs, or timelines. Council would retain control over spending and project prioritization through the annual budgeting process. There are no large upfront financial commitments and no implied timelines. At the same time, this approach keeps MODL ready to act when opportunities arise. So whether it's provincial or federal funding program, a cost-sharing partnership, or a community trail initiative, the AT plan functions as a back pocket strategy document that staff can reference for implementation, for planning, or working with public works. It provides the tools and guidance that staff need to act strategically. So in summary, this approach helps us with readiness, not immediate delivery. Projects still come forward individually for council approval, but staff have the tools to act, and the public sees that MODL is actively advancing active transportation in a thoughtful and responsible way. If endorsed, active transportation initiatives would move forward through existing municipal processes. Projects would come forward through annual capital and operating budgets, as well as 5-year capital planning. Modal would also pursue grant opportunities and partnerships as they arise. So today, staff are asking that you receive the updated approach, recognize that the AT plan will be an internal working document that will guide active transportation work at Modal, and adopt the motion to approve the policy. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. The motion in front of us speaks directly to approving a new policy, but in case there's questions around urban systems design and how we got here, I'll open up the floor now so we don't limit discussion to just the policy. Is there any comments or questions? Councillor Smith.
With bringing the transportation plan internal, my only concern is around the public consultation that was done and the contributions that the public made to that plan, and making sure that that is valued and maybe accessible to the public, so that they can see where we're going and how we got there. Can you just speak a little bit about the public consultation that was done, the quality of the input? Like, did we get a good response? Yeah, I would just like to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, they did a lot of different, like it was over a 10-month period, so they had different in-person sessions and surveys and things like that. So I do agree that this plan does a really good job of, like, it's already done the work of going to the community, and it also does a nice job of breaking things down over short-term, medium-term, and long-term. So where it might not be something that's, you know, on the website, it's still something that we will be using. So as the Active Living Coordinator, taking this and looking at all of these things and keeping them in mind. So yeah, it's sort of like that work's been done, and now we can just continue and dig into it a little bit more. Or do you want more specifics on the engagements?
No, that's all right. I guess I am struggling a little bit with this because it is, you know, a very interesting document, and for us to have been the first rural municipality to take on such a project, it's unfortunate that it won't be publicly accessible. So I guess I'm thinking, is there a way to kind of split the difference between having that document available because the public paid for it and contributed to it, but also be able to say, like, the implementation plan is not manageable through the funding that we have or can obtain.
I think our Director of Recreation is going to add some comments, but the document from Urban Planning, I'm being told, is a public document that they can, yeah.
It's been presented publicly multiple times, so certainly available, but Trudy's here to give us some background.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that it was actually received in a public format. It hasn't been officially adopted by council in a motion, so we could certainly put it on the website if that's the direction of council, and make it clear that it's received and it's the policy that's guiding. There was extensive public consultation, just to add to that. They did one round and got the input, and then did another series and went back out and said, this is what we heard, did we get it correct? So it, as Maura has indicated, it was over 10 months, and that's really how that 34 kilometers of connections was developed in the plan. And also, to Maura's point, is we would have to extensively partner with other people, because we don't typically own our roads, we don't own the trails, and we don't. So if we're connecting to those recreation assets, schools, and major destinations, it will involve extensive partnerships.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
I remember the discussion earlier when this was presented, and I appreciate that it's captured here in the notes, managing public expectation, maintaining flexibility, and ensuring financial responsibility. I think that, you know, my problem with the report that was presented from the consultants was that it was aspirational in a way that was, I think, unrealistic. So when you ask the public and you don't place any parameters around what you hope to do or how you want to use that engagement to guide decision-making, people will ask for the sky. We've all probably seen that happen before, and I feel that the document provided an aspirational guide that is not really very realistic. So I appreciate what's been done here because I think it does frame it out in a way that I still think is a bit aspirational, but I can maybe live with that. But I'm not sure that it's realistic in a rural community as I'll say diverse and expansive as what we live in, to think that alternatives to vehicular travel is really a realistic point to, and it's captured here in several ways within the policy. Around connectivity, it says to reduce travel times and to significantly improve travel times for active transportation users, and then states in its purpose to support alternatives to vehicular travel. I don't know that that is realistic. And I guess I'm quite pragmatic in my view of writing policies that are, that don't provide some kind of practical guidance. And as you know, I am a big proponent of active transportation, but I also think we have to frame it out in a way that's realistic in a rural community. That would just be my opinion on that particular piece about alternatives to vehicular travel. And I'd appreciate comment from the recreation folks, either Ms. Fryer or Ms. Payne, on how that is viewed within the recreation world.
I don't disagree that there's a challenge with a rural community. It makes it a lot easier if you're in a town to make those connections. I think through the public consultation, what was identified by Urban Systems is because we are rural, we can't necessarily be everything to everybody, but we can look at where we can make those connections where it makes sense in some of those communities, so like New Germany or Petite, and where you can realistically make those connections. So, when you think about 34 kilometers, it might not seem like a lot in a rural community, but what was identified in the community consultations were these were key connections. And I go back to, Maura saying, the park and ride. So recognizing that we do live in a rural community and we cannot unrealistically connect everything, but we can make it a little bit easier. So somebody could possibly, and it doesn't require a vehicle to drive and park, but then you finish your destination or finish your ride on a bike or an e-bike to get to that other destination. And so those, so it will take a while. This is why this was a 10-year plan. The first year plan was, paved shoulders at 50 million. Sometimes I align this active transportation plan to the same aspirations of the open space strategic plan that we did in 2001. And when we think about the first 26 priorities that was identified, that did include partnering with people. It did include maybe purchasing property through private private ownership, and we reduced that to 21 priorities. And have we accomplished everything in that open space strategic plan? No, because we looked at it strategically at the time, what we could financially afford, the flexibility, what opportunities was there. So Firebrook Falls is one that comes to mind. when the opportunity came, we approached the private owners to acquire that, and that opportunity was there. We knew the opportunity 5 years before that wasn't there. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but it is about trying to make connection to some of those core communities that you can encourage active transportation. And as Maura has indicated, it's not just about infrastructure. It is about programming. It is about education and awareness. It's about safety. And, if there was an opportunity for a paved shoulder, even though it's not identified in that plan, we do look at the 5-year capital plan that the Public Works puts out. And if we saw that there was an opportunity, I would be bringing that forth, or one of the staff would be bringing that forth to council as a consideration to partner with Public Works, even though it's not specifically identified within that 35 kilometers. I know I'm very long-winded. I apologize.
Councillor Oikel.
Thank you. Yes, that consultation you had already mentioned regarding some things that were missing, some communities such as Wildville and Blue Rocks and Hebville as well. And I read over the policy, and I really do like it. I think that it is a wonderful alternative to adopting, rather than adopting what the right said, because they did have loopholes. There were not loopholes, but there were missing information from different communities. And the vehicle travel part, alternatives to vehicle travel, I was thinking along the same lines as you, that it was more within the community, like maybe New Germany. Instead of taking your car to go get pizza, you walk there because there's a path. Or in Petite, the same thing, or in the La Have area. Yeah, that's what I was thinking regarding that. Thank you.
We do have a motion before us. Is there somebody willing to bring forward that motion for consideration? Councillor Oikel.
Thank you. To the Chair, Deputy Mayor Vino, and members of the committee, I move that the Policy and Strategy Committee recommends that Council approve new Policy 103, Active Transportation, as presented, and thereby give 7 days' notice of Council's intent to adopt at the March 24, 2026 Council meeting, and I so move.
Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Hubley. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Opposed is Councillor Bell. Motion is approved. Thank you. We have one more item under Recreation, Parks, and Tourism Department, and that is the Miller Point Peace Park Advisory Committee dissolution. And Tissy Bolivar, our program coordinator, will present that topic.
Thank you. So today I'm before you to bring a motion to dissolve the Miller Point Peace Park Advisory Committee. So the committee has been struggling to attract and retain active members for several years now. The committee discussed its role, the future needs of the committee, and they made the recommendation to dissolve themselves as a committee. So I'm bringing this before you for consideration. So based on the terms of reference for the Miller Point Peace Park Committee, Advisory Committee, the committee shall consist of 6 residents of the municipality, a recreation staff person, and 1 councillor. At present, there are 4 members of the community who are still involved in the committee. However, their terms are all technically expired. And it's been difficult to, like I said, to attract and retain members. It's been an ongoing conversation we've had for a number of years, and we've had recruitment drives and different things that we've tried, and it's just, we'll get a new member and then they don't stay for very long, so it's just been a revolving door. So the key responsibilities of the committee, as outlined in the terms of reference for that committee, are to work with recreation staff to establish a community plan for the park, which is not something that has happened. The committee will bring forth concerns, issues, and ideas from the community concerning the park. This has been the primary role of the committee, is to identify ideas, concerns, or things and bring it forward, and then we evaluate those. The committee will advise recreation staff and council on matters pertaining to the park. The committee will provide recreation staff input on the operation and policies relating to the park. The committee will research and examine issues as directed by council and report findings to council through the committee of the whole, which we don't have anymore. The committee shall annually review the community plan to ensure it's meeting the needs of the community. Like I said, we do not have a community plan for that park. And the committee, or the chair of the committee may be requested to provide updates to council. So the committee currently has been meeting about up to 3 times a year as needed, but usually once to twice. And the committee members are satisfied with the current management and maintenance of the park. They're happy with how the park is in its current state, the future projects that are planned for the park, and they don't feel that their contributions as a committee are necessary at this time. So they are requesting dissolution.
You answered the one question I was going to ask, and that was how does the committee feel about it? So it's good that you outlined that they support this recommendation. We'll put the motion on the floor and then have discussion at that time if there's any comments. Somebody bring forward that motion, please. Mayor McLean-Weil.
To the chair, Deputy Mayor Vino, and members of the committee, I move that the Policy and Strategy Committee recommends that council approve the dissolution of the Miller Point Peace Park Advisory Committee effective immediately.
Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Bell. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Smith.
Can you just say why this committee was started? We don't have advisory committees for many parks. As far as I know. Why was it started? Why was a community plan as part of the terms of reference?
For sure. I'm going to refer to Trudy, as this was before my time that the committee was formed, so probably before her time as well, but.
No, this was actually just as I was coming on
perfect.
board in 2009. There were a number of issues happening at the park, some public displays that you wouldn't normally accept in a park. And so there were concerns raised by the community. And so one of the, in order to have community input and how things were going to be managed, we had a public meeting, and it was agreed that we would strike a Miller Point Peace Park Advisory Committee, who has served well through the years. We had a very active committee at the very beginning. We had community members patrolling, not taking issues within their own hands, but reporting any incidents. We actually had the RCMP engaged at one point in time doing regular checks and reporting back. A lot of those issues that created the advisory committee has really no longer exist. And so, as Tissy has said, there's been struggles, and I think part of the struggle is the community members understanding what their role is and what their contribution is. And so I think that what started the committee, those issues have been resolved. Community members are happy with the way it's being managed. It's a well-used park, and often when you have a well-used park, you don't have as many issues because there are a lot more eyes. And I can say it's one of the parks when I drive throughout the municipality that I can always guarantee, no matter what time of day, there's vehicles there. People use it to walk their dogs. It's a beautiful, it's a peaceful park. A lot of people go there. So to Tissy's point, this has been actually an ongoing with the committee for several years. And, I think that's the resolution. We didn't push things. This is a resolution that they organically came to.
This park is in Councillor Brooks' district, and while he's not here today, I think that one or both of you did have conversations with him, and I wondered if you could just comment on that for the public record.
Yeah, absolutely. So Councillor Brooks was part of our committee meeting back in, I want to say, September or October, when we had a very fruitful conversation about the future of the committee. And then he wasn't at our meeting in December when the committee finally came to the conclusion and made the recommendation. I did reach out to him after to let him know about what their decision was moving forward, and he supported that. And then just kind of noted that if we can find ways that we have mindful eyes or helpful hands at that park when needed, that the committee, I'm sure, would still like to play a role.
Thank you for adding that. Mayor McLean-Weil.
I will just say that the useful eyes are at work because it is the park that I've had people call me as the mayor to say, this has happened, and we've followed up on some of those things. So the eyes are there, permanent residents that live close to the park, as well as the users of the park are the eyes. So I think, and there certainly are people, because I've been in that park, and there's people I've talked to there that go every day. So they're really vigilant about how the park is cared for and how how others are using it. So I think we have eyes there without having a committee.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, up next, we have mayors, deputy mayors, councilors' matters, and item 10.1, council deliberation regarding Blue Lantern shellfish. And our CEO is going to outline what decision we have to make today, if any.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So today it's a bit unusual for us to put a council matter on for deliberation without a staff report. The circumstances that led to this, we were contacted by Sid Demerick from MICA with a request that they present on this Blue Lantern shellfish aquaculture application. So we added MICA to the agenda. We reached out to Paul McGinnis of Blue Lantern Shellfish, offered him an opportunity to present as well, followed that up with another email to see if he would like to present. Unfortunately, we haven't heard from him. Gathered up the application material, which is approximately 275 pages long, scanned through that, highlighted some information for the mayor, gave her a copy, contacted the deputy minister and requested an extension because there's only 20 days, or there's to March 20th, the deadline to make submissions if council wants to. Unfortunately, the timeline is by regulation and it couldn't be extended. So if council chooses or opts to file submit a response to the application, it would have to be done today, or council would have to decide what it wanted to say today to meet the 20th deadline. We couldn't wait till the next council meeting on the 24th because then we would be barred by statute from putting in a submission. So unfortunately, there is no staff report today that will help guide council in the decision. So you have the information that Mr. Demerick provided. You have the questions and answers that were given. I only have a limited ability to answer questions because I don't fully understand aquaculture or this type of farming. And after I had a lovely experience with MICA out on the water, but I saw a great white shark, and I'm not going on the water again. So I'm not of a lot of use, and my deputy is conflicted out, so he can't help either. So it's an awkward situation for council. Council's options are to do a submission of some kind, either for or against, or neutral, or questioning. So those are the four avenues that you could explore. Or council could simply indicate that the information was good to receive, but we're not in a position to make a formal response because we don't have enough information, lack a staff report, and because of time, we cannot get that in front of council before the March 20th deadline. So with that guideline in mind, we'll leave it to council to decide or to discuss how they want to move it forward. Thank you.
So a motion would only come out if we were in support of a submission, is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. So we'll open it to the floor for discussion, but there's several different options here, so I don't even want to, excuse me, propose one quite yet. Councillor Oikel.
So it would only be if we were supporting the Blue Lantern, not asking for them to look at alternative areas. Is that what
No,
you're
if
telling them?
council wants to do any kind of submission, so you could put a submission in support of Micah's position, you could put a position in support of Blue Lantern's position for the application, you could put a submission in questioning aspects of it, and whether there, as was indicated during the Micah presentation, are there other places or spots in the bay that could be considered rather than this because of the conflict between high boating areas and the proposed farming areas. So if council wants to make a submission, it has to decide what it wants in that submission. And then we have to use an electronic portal with a reference number to put the information in and electronically submit it. If council were to decide that there's just not sufficient time, and in the absence of a staff report, council's not comfortable taking any position, that would be a decision as well. But it would be more of a decision not to do something, not to do a submission, because we can't get the extension past March 20th.
As for myself, I do not know enough about boating to say whether or not boats are able to maneuver around the 106 acres. I would have to go with Micah's opinion that it would be very difficult and challenging, as well as what Councillor Bell said regarding one particular area would be dangerous. And at the same time, having a shellfish enterprise that can develop into even more than that regarding the kelp, because kelp is becoming quite marketable in foreign countries as well as for health reasons within North America, that, not to have that alt stopped. So looking at other areas, as stated by our Micah representative, I think would be something that should be considered. That would be what I would like for us to do, but that's just my opinion, of course.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I'm not sure that I'm going to offer much information. Normally, in the past, I have tried not to get involved in provincial or federal issues. I recognize our level of government and what we're responsible for. And I made that quite clear on a number of occasions. I do understand that the economy of Nova Scotia has to look at different types of income and employment opportunities. When I look at this, it's much better than uranium mining. So I don't want to be too harsh on saying what is good or is not good for the Nova Scotia economy or its possible jobs that it could produce. But as a sailor, I think that at least one of the locations could have been relocated to an area as a compromise. So I go on record as saying I'm not against this type of farming, but I would like them to give some consideration of the individuals who are involved in the recreational motor sailing or sail sailing, and maybe have a greater dialogue with that group to see if they have chosen at least one of their three locations as the best site. It might be the best site for the depth of the water or something like that that I'm not aware of. But I do realize that a large number of people, some from MODL, but most from HRM and other locations, have a major investment in that recreational area, and we should be taking their thoughts into consideration. When I say we, I mean collectively as a province. not MODL, because it's actually, not our responsibility. Thank you.
Councillor Hubley.
Well, that kind of answers my question, because I was going to ask Councillor Bell his opinion, being the avid sailor that he is. I support the request of Micah. I agree also that one of these farms can be moved for the safety of boaters. I think it is something that we should support.
Just while other people might be gathering their thoughts, I'm along the same lines as well, trying to see both sides and wondering if other areas could be explored, knowing I've been up through those islands a couple times, and not only is it the sailing aspect, but it's the beauty of what you see. And I think this would be a nice compromise for both. So right now we have 4 that are encouraging other areas to be considered for this farm. So those I haven't heard from yet. Councillor Smith.
I really appreciated the presentation. I don't feel like I have enough information to send a letter to the province at this point. I would really like a presentation from Blue Lantern, and I'll probably go to the open house. I see they're having an open house at the Mahone Bay Center on May 1st. I realize that's too late, but yeah, I just doing my due diligence, I feel like I would need to hear more from Blue Lantern and understand a little bit more of the process, because if the Ecology Action Center is saying that there is still time for modifications and negotiation and, moving the space around, then that's also kind of information I'm taking in, and I would like to hear more about the process and where Blue Lantern is at with it. Because, as people have mentioned, economic development is really important, and if this were an industry that I felt could not be regulated sustainably, I would have, more urgent concerns and support us speaking up about it. But as it is, I do feel it can be regulated sustainably. So I'm wondering where our place is in this process. And just as kind of a follow-up question, do we know if the town of Mahone Bay has taken a position or sent a letter regarding this process?
I haven't heard anything from the town. So are they having, just your comment about the May 1st open house? They had an open house May 1st, 2025.
Let me check.
So the submission on the application deadline is March 20th, and then it would be with the review by the provincial board.
I'm just going by published date, March 11th, 2026. Maybe if people from the gallery can suggest that I've gotten something wrong.
I'm sorry to interrupt, just in order for those in the gallery to speak, it requires a motion, so I'll allow you a second or two. Councillor Smith, if you want to summarize what you're looking at there, and then we'll continue. Any other comments or questions from council members? Mayor McLean-Weil.
It's not a question. I feel like, we have to represent the interests of everybody. And today we unfortunately don't have that balance, and nor then do we have staff that can actually present a summary of information that they may find. I mean, I did read the application, and Tom has reviewed it. I'm not an expert on any of it, but I I did take time to look at it. The one thing that has been raised, and the question that I asked of Mr. Demerick was the interaction between MICA and the proponent, Blue Lantern, and I think some of you at council have referenced, is there a way there could be discussion between the two to try to find other locations that might be compatible for the two to coexist? I think that speaks to what really needs to happen in these kinds of developments, is that rather than the them and us approach that we see so often happen in Nova Scotia, we need to be able to sit at the table and find common ground, and maybe there isn't common ground, but then there is a reasonable conversation and an understanding that's developed between the two about how we can coexist. And I think these will become the challenges as we go forward on whether it be fish farming or fish development or some of the other projects that the province is promoting. So I would favor a letter that supported a discussion between the proponent and it may not just be MICA, because I also received yesterday a letter from the La Have Yacht Club about this, but that some of the people that are experts in the recreation area be part of that conversation to identify, are there better locations? And I think that's still a question that needs to be resolved between the community and the proponent. And so I could live with that, given that we don't have full information. And I think having the ongoing conversation then allows for more consideration of this.
Any other speakers? So this would be the opportunity if anybody wants to bring forward a motion for any of the suggestions that are, any of the options our CEO brought forward. If there's nobody wanting to bring forward a motion, we'll conclude the discussion. Mayor McLean-Weil.
I could make one based on my last comment if you feel that, if people are kind of nodding saying we could live with that, I'll put that as a motion.
Okay.
I would move that we submit a letter to the application process that would reflect our involvement as a municipality in protecting the islands and the waterways for public use, yet recognizing that we would encourage a conversation between MICA and the proponent in identifying other locations that might be suitable to allow both to coexist.
Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Bell. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Opposed is Councillor Smith and Councillor Burns. Motion is carried. Thank you. So we have one more item on our regular agenda, and that's under added items, 11.1 correspondence. And Mayor McLean-Weil, you had added this as the added item. Would you like to present on that?
Yeah, I think Councillor Burns needs to declare
I would have a conflict or a substantial perceived conflict by the person who wrote the letter, so it's best that I'm not a part of this.
Perfect. So Councillor Burns has, not perfect. Thank you for bringing that forward, for addressing that you have a conflict of interest.
I like spending time with you too.
And, and removing yourself from the council table.
This is, again, we're trying to be flexible in responding to things that we receive from the public. And we did receive correspondence from Jay Sutherland and Janine Sutherland from Little Hook Developments and Mason Beach Road. And this is, we received it, you received a package. He was very specific about having these delivered to each of you. and it is in regard to the coastal protection regulations. I can summarize the key points that were raised. He asked if we could read his concerns into the public record. He's not able to attend today. And our policy doesn't allow that. So that's why we've brought this forward as correspondence. And you have received the package, and I would encourage you to read through it. It does relate primarily to the impact of coastal protection regulations and its impact on development and values of properties. As you know, the coastal protection regulations were adopted some time ago, and they're not part of the review process that we're going through with the municipal planning strategy. And in my reading of this, I think Mr. Sutherland may be misunderstood that this could be part of the review, but it is not. So that is one aspect of this. The correspondence, in my view, should be referred to staff for response to him, but it is tabled here today to recognize that we did receive it. I have acknowledged it directly to him, and you have received the package today. I think that's all I need to say.
Thank you for summarizing that. This concludes our regular portion of the agenda today. We'll take a quick 10-minute recess, and when we resume, we'll go in camera for our discussions. So continuing back to our agenda, item number 12 in camera. Can I have a motion to go in camera? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Hubley. All those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. We are now in camera. Camera. You know. This now concludes the meeting of the Policy and Strategy Committee, and we will call this meeting adjourned.